Every morning, millions of people peel a banana, believing they're doing something good for their health. It's quick, easy, naturally sweet, and loaded with potassium. For decades, the banana has been seen as one of nature's perfect foods. But what if something so familiar, so seemingly harmless, could quietly affect the health of your brain over time? What if the very habits surrounding how and when we eat this fruit could make the difference between keeping a sharp, vibrant mind or slowly losing focus, memory, and clarity without realizing why? It sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? Yet the truth is that even healthy foods can work against us when we misunderstand how our bodies change with age, especially after 50, when metabolism, hormones, and neural chemistry evolve in subtle but profound ways. At this stage of life, the body no longer processes certain nutrients the same way it once did. What once fueled energy now sometimes leads to sluggishness, and what once supported mental clarity can begin to cloud it. That's exactly why understanding how bananas, yes, something as simple as bananas, interact with the brain becomes so crucial. Because your brain is not the same organ it was when you were 20 or 30. Its neurons are more sensitive now, its chemistry more delicate, and every bite you take either protects or challenges that balance. Now, this isn't about fear, it's about awareness. There's a big difference between saying bananas are bad and saying bananas can backfire when you make these mistakes. The truth is, bananas can be incredibly beneficial for brain health. They contain vitamin B6, which plays a role in neurotransmitter production, magnesium, which helps nerve cells communicate, and even small amounts of dopamine, the feel-good chemical. But all of that depends on how they're eaten, when they're eaten, and what else accompanies them. The same banana that fuels mental clarity in one person can trigger brain fog in another, simply because of timing or combination. Most people never think about that. They just peel, eat, and go. Here's the reality that few talk about. Your brain relies on a delicate rhythm of blood sugar, oxygen, and neurotransmitter activity. Every food you eat influences that rhythm. Bananas, being naturally rich in sugar, even though it's natural sugar, can create rapid spikes and drops in blood glucose. For someone with a youthful metabolism, that's not a problem. But after 50, the pancreas, liver, and even the brain's own insulin sensitivity begin to change. Sudden sugar spikes can flood the bloodstream, forcing the brain to work harder to stabilize itself. The result? Temporary clarity, followed by fatigue, focus that fades into fog, energy that turns into irritability. And over time, those micro-fluctuations become a silent stress on the brain. You may not feel it at first, but it's happening quietly in the background. This is one of the first mistakes people make with bananas. They treat them as neutral. They think natural means harmless, but nature, though kind, is complex. Take a moment to picture what's happening inside your brain right after that sweet morning banana. The sugar rush reaches your bloodstream within minutes. Your pancreas releases insulin to lower it. Your brain receives a quick burst of glucose, a little spark of energy. You feel good for a short while. Then insulin does its job a bit too efficiently, and your blood sugar dips lower than before. The brain, being extremely sensitive to glucose levels, feels that dip almost immediately. Concentration wavers. You feel distracted, sometimes even anxious or moody. Not because you did anything wrong, but because that one fruit eaten alone and on an empty stomach started a chain reaction. What's more, if you combine that banana with caffeine, say your morning coffee, the effect can double. Caffeine heightens the body's stress response, prompting the release of cortisol, a hormone that makes your cells less responsive to insulin temporarily. So now your blood sugar spikes higher and drops faster. It's a roller coaster your brain has to ride whether you want it to or not. Over time, this repeated pattern has been linked to reduced cognitive performance, slower memory recall, and even changes in mood regulation. The irony is that people often eat this combination to feel energized or focused, but end up doing the opposite. Another subtle mistake lies in the ripeness of the banana. Have you noticed how its sweetness changes as it ripens? That's because the starch in the fruit gradually turns into simple sugars. A greenish banana is full of resistant starch, a type that digests slowly, providing a steady release of energy. But once it becomes yellow with brown spots, that resistant starch has largely converted into simple glucose and fructose, which digest rapidly. To a young, active body, that's fine. To a mature brain that craves stability, it's not ideal. Especially in the morning, when cortisol is naturally higher, adding a high-sugar fruit can lead to unpredictable swings in energy and attention. Some neuroscientists even suggest that diets with frequent sugar fluctuations can interfere with the brain's ability to clear out beta amyloid, a protein linked to memory decline. Imagine that. Something as simple as preferring ripe bananas over slightly firm ones could influence how your brain ages. But the story goes deeper than sugar. Bananas also contain an amino acid called tryptophan, which the body uses to produce serotonin, a neurotransmitter that supports mood and sleep. That's good news, right? Not always. If your diet lacks enough vitamin B6, magnesium, and certain cofactors, the conversion of tryptophan can become inefficient. That means instead of calming your nervous system, it can actually cause mild irritability or fatigue. This happens more often than people think, especially in older adults whose absorption of nutrients declines with age. The banana itself provides some of what's needed for the conversion, but not always enough. The result? You eat it thinking it will lift your mood, but instead, you feel oddly tired or unmotivated. That's not your imagination, that's chemistry at work. And then there's timing. When you eat matters almost as much as what you eat. Many people enjoy bananas late at night, thinking it's a light, healthy snack before bed. But here's what happens. As digestion begins, blood sugar rises again, triggering insulin release just when your body is preparing for rest. Insulin competes with melatonin, the sleep hormone, and that can delay deep sleep onset. Meanwhile, the rise in tryptophan and serotonin may make you feel drowsy, but the sugar rush prevents the brain from fully relaxing. The result is a restless sleep or waking up around 3 a.m. with low blood sugar. Over time, poor sleep quality impairs memory consolidation and emotional balance, two critical components of brain health. So even a simple bedtime banana can work against you without you realizing it. It's not just about sugar or timing, though. There's also the issue of combination. Bananas are often paired with processed foods, cereals, flavored yogurts, even peanut butter brands with added sugar. These combinations multiply the glycemic impact, creating a cascade of insulin spikes that can damage brain cells through oxidative stress. The brain's neurons are extremely energy demanding and delicate. When oxidative stress increases, inflammation follows. And chronic inflammation in the brain has been linked not only to memory decline, but also to mood disorders and even degenerative diseases over time. It's fascinating and sobering to realize how everyday choices accumulate. A banana here, a sweet coffee there, a skipped meal later. Each one seems harmless in isolation, but together they shape the environment your brain lives in every day. And the brain, unlike other organs, doesn't regenerate easily. It depends on steady, gentle care. Think of it like a garden. Feed it too much of one thing. And the balance tips. Feed it thoughtfully and it thrives for decades. Here's something else few people know. As we age, the blood-brain barrier, the protective shield that filters what enters the brain, becomes slightly more permeable. This means that fluctuations in blood sugar, sodium, or inflammatory molecules have a more direct impact on brain cells than they once did. So when your blood sugar jumps after eating a sweet fruit alone, it's not just your body that feels it. It's your brain, too. It's as if a small electrical storm passes through your neurons, forcing them to work harder to maintain equilibrium. Do that every day for years and it begins to take a toll. Now, imagine you're someone who loves starting the day with a banana. Because it feels light and energizing, you eat it quickly on the go, maybe with coffee. For years you've done this. You feel fine, mostly. But lately, you've noticed it's harder to focus after breakfast. Sometimes you forget small things. A name, a task, a reason you walked into a room. You chalk it up to aging, maybe stress. But deep down your brain is sending signals of imbalance. It's not that the banana caused the problem. It's that your habits around it created a pattern your brain struggles to keep up with. Understanding this is empowering. Because once you see how each piece connects, sugar, timing, ripeness, combination, you begin to realize that small adjustments can make all the difference. And that's what this journey is about. Not giving up the foods you love, but learning how to align them with your body's changing needs. After all, food should serve you, not the other way around. There's another layer to this story: minerals. Bananas are known for potassium, which supports heart rhythm and muscle function. But most people overlook the fact that too much potassium, especially when kidney function has begun to slow slightly with age, can create imbalances that affect blood pressure and fluid regulation. Why does this matter for the brain? Because cerebral blood flow, the circulation that delivers oxygen and nutrients to your brain cells, depends on that delicate balance. If blood pressure fluctuates wildly, the brain either receives too much or too little oxygen in short bursts. Over time, those fluctuations can impair tiny blood vessels known as capillaries. Think of them as micro-highways feeding your memory, concentration, and alertness. When they're damaged, your brain becomes like a city experiencing rolling blackouts, small, barely noticeable disruptions at first, but cumulatively damaging over the years. And yet the banana itself isn't the villain, it's just misunderstood. In the right context, with balance and knowledge, it can actually become a powerful ally for brain health. But before we get to that part, it's crucial to understand the deeper reasons why these mistakes matter so much more after 50. Because once we cross that threshold, the body's resilience changes. The mitochondria, the tiny energy factories inside your cells, start to slow down. They produce less ATP, the energy currency your brain depends on. The result? Fatigue, slower processing, occasional confusion. Add to that the fact that hormonal shifts, like declining estrogen or testosterone, also affect how glucose is used in the brain, and suddenly, the same diet that once worked perfectly now creates friction. The key is adaptation, recognizing that your body's rules have changed and adjusting your choices to match them. So when someone over 50 eats a banana the wrong way, too ripe, too often alone, or at the wrong time, they're not just eating a piece of fruit. They're triggering a cascade that can quietly drain mental sharpness day after day. It's subtle but real. Some neuroscientists even call it the hidden fatigue effect, a gradual dulling of focus that many attribute to stress, but which can stem from repetitive dietary patterns that no longer serve the aging brain. It's also worth noting that bananas contain compounds called biogenic amines, like tyramine, which in sensitive individuals can constrict blood vessels and trigger mild headaches or even migraines. This becomes more common as we age because the enzymes that break down these compounds, like monoamine oxidase, MEO, naturally decline over time. It's the same reason why some people become more sensitive to red wine or cheese as they get older. Bananas fall into that same chemical family, though few realize it. Again, it's not dangerous for everyone, but it's something to be aware of if you often experience unexplained head tension or sudden dips in mental clarity after eating them. When you start connecting these dots, the picture becomes clear. The banana, in all its simplicity, carries layers of influence on the brain. Sugar balance, neurotransmitter modulation, vascular flow, mineral equilibrium, all interconnected. The mistakes come not from malice or ignorance, but from routine. Habits we built in youth that no longer fit the body we live in today. And yet, awareness changes everything. Once you know how to adjust, you can turn the same fruit that once caused fatigue into something that sustains focus, memory, and calm energy. That's the beauty of learning about food through the lens of longevity, not fear, but adaptation. Understanding that every choice can either accelerate or slow the aging of the mind. The human brain, after all, thrives on consistency and care. And while you can't control every variable in life, you can absolutely control how you nourish it each day. Because the goal isn't just to live longer, it's to stay mentally alive while you do. If the first block opened your eyes to the subtle mistakes many people make with something as simple as a banana, this one will take you deeper into the real risks, what science reveals about how these mistakes quietly shape the brain over time. Because the truth is, the human brain after 50 becomes both more resilient in wisdom and more fragile in chemistry. It learns faster from meaning, but struggles more with imbalance. And when imbalance becomes routine, through what we eat, when we eat, and how often, we create an internal environment where even good intentions can backfire. Let's start with the most underestimated risk: glucose volatility. Your brain runs almost entirely on glucose. It's its primary fuel. But it's not about how much glucose you consume. It's about how steadily you provide it. The brain consumes roughly 20% of the body's total energy, even though it only makes up about 2% of your weight. That means it's hungry for balance, not excess. When you eat a ripe banana, especially on an empty stomach, you send a quick surge of glucose into the bloodstream. Your pancreas rushes to release insulin to bring that sugar down. For a few minutes, your neurons are flooded with energy, but just as quickly, the levels crash. The result: micro-episodes of neuroglycopenia, moments when brain cells are underfueled, even if your blood sugar is technically normal. Most people don't even notice it consciously. They just feel slightly foggy, or tired, or distracted. Maybe they crave another coffee, or something sweet mid-morning. They assume it's just part of getting older or a bad night's sleep. But what's happening inside is much more precise. The neurons are signaling distress. The synapses, the tiny bridges between brain cells, start to lose their efficiency. Neurotransmitters misfire. Over time, repeated cycles of glucose spikes and dips cause a process known as oxidative stress. Think of it as microscopic rust forming inside your brain's wiring. It's not dramatic, not painful, but it's relentless. Several studies from institutions like Harvard and the National Institute on Aging have shown that people who experience chronic glucose instability in midlife and beyond tend to show faster cognitive decline, even if they're not diabetic. That means the same sugar surges caused by eating sweet fruits alone, like a ripe banana, can, over years, contribute to what scientists call brain energy deficit. This doesn't mean you stop eating fruit. It means you learn how to control the rhythm of energy you give your brain. Now, let's move to another hidden risk: dopamine dysregulation. Bananas contain small amounts of dopamine and its precursor, L-dopa. That's why you may feel a subtle mood lift after eating one. But dopamine, the chemical of motivation and focus, is extremely delicate. Its balance is influenced by the foods you eat, your sleep, your stress, and even your gut bacteria. When your diet frequently produces blood sugar swings, your dopamine system adapts. It starts to crave quick rewards. That's part of why people find themselves snacking more often or struggling to stay mentally present during long tasks. The brain becomes conditioned to chase small bursts of stimulation instead of sustained clarity. And here's where it connects back to aging. Dopamine production naturally declines with age. After 50, the number of dopamine receptors in the brain begins to drop, especially in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for focus, planning, and emotional regulation. Combine that natural decline with dietary habits that overstimulate and exhaust the dopamine system, and the result is a faster slide into apathy, low motivation, and attention problems. So, when people say, "I just don't feel as sharp anymore," it's rarely just about age. It's about chemistry that's been pushed out of balance by years of seemingly harmless habits. But dopamine isn't the only neurotransmitter influenced by your banana habit. Remember tryptophan, the amino acid that contributes to serotonin. It's essential for mood regulation, but it competes with other amino acids for transport into the brain. If you eat a banana without adequate protein nearby, tryptophan uptake is inefficient. You get a short-lived serotonin response without true stability. That's why some people feel a momentary calm or contentment after eating one, but soon experience emotional dips later in the day. The brain doesn't want emotional highs or lows, it wants steady regulation. Then there's inflammation, the silent saboteur of brain health. Every cell in your brain exists in a delicate balance between oxidation and repair. Antioxidants from fruits and vegetables protect against damage, but when sugar intake, even from natural sources, becomes too frequent or unbuffered by fiber and fat, it increases inflammatory molecules like cytokines. These cytokines cross the blood-brain barrier and interfere with communication between neurons. You might not feel pain, but you feel it in other ways. Slower recall, less creativity, a shorter attention span. The irony is that people who rely heavily on fruit for energy are often unknowingly fueling the very inflammation that dulls their mind. The ripple effect doesn't stop there. As inflammation increases, the brain's ability to detoxify itself decreases. Normally, while you sleep, your brain engages a process called the glymphatic system. a kind of nighttime cleansing network that flushes out waste proteins, including beta-amyloid and tau. These are the same proteins that, when accumulated, are associated with Alzheimer's and other cognitive diseases. But high blood sugar and chronic inflammation can impair this system. That means the brain doesn't clean itself as effectively. The result isn't immediate, but over years it accumulates like dust in a forgotten room. Here's where one of the most surprising mistakes appears: timing bananas near poor sleep patterns. If you eat high-sugar fruits close to bedtime, you may trigger late-night insulin surges that disrupt deep sleep stages. Since deep sleep is when the glymphatic system does most of its work, even a small delay or interruption in that cycle reduces cleansing efficiency. In other words, a banana before bed might feel comforting, but it could be subtly preventing your brain from cleaning itself properly. Another risk often ignored is electrolyte imbalance. Bananas are rich in potassium, but few realize that the brain's electrical activity, its communication system, depends on a precise ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium. As people age, especially those who take medications for blood pressure or heart health, this balance becomes fragile. Too much potassium or too little magnesium can affect nerve conduction. The result might be mild confusion, dizziness, or even irregular heartbeats that reduce oxygen supply to the brain. Again, this isn't about fear. It's about understanding that after 50, the systems that regulate electrolytes aren't as forgiving. They require more balance, not extremes. Let's explore another subtle but important aspect: gut-brain signaling. The gut is often called the second brain because it produces neurotransmitters and communicates with the central nervous system through the vagus nerve. Bananas, depending on their ripeness, feed different bacteria in your gut. Unripe bananas contain resistant starch, which acts like a prebiotic, feeding beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. These molecules support brain health and reduce inflammation. But overripe bananas feed bacteria that thrive on simple sugars, which can promote gas, bloating, and dysbiosis, a condition where harmful bacteria outnumber the good. This imbalance affects the gut lining and through it the brain. It can even influence mood, anxiety, and sleep patterns. So the choice between a slightly green banana and a spotted one is more than just a matter of taste. It's a neurological decision. What makes all this more concerning is how subtle it is. These effects don't announce themselves with pain or warning. They build quietly, day by day. You wake up one morning and realize your focus isn't what it used to be, or your mood feels flatter, or your energy fades faster. Most people blame age, but often it's adaptation failure, the brain trying to function in an internal environment that's constantly shifting. Here's something that surprises even nutrition experts: the cumulative effect of small dietary spikes. Even if your overall diet seems balanced, if your mornings begin with rapid glucose spikes, it sets the tone for the entire day. The body releases more insulin, your cortisol rhythm shifts, and your hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, miscommunicate. You end up craving faster energy later, which leads to snacking. Those snacks further destabilize blood sugar. By evening, your brain has been through half a dozen biochemical mood swings. That's why, when people improve their breakfast composition, adding protein, fiber, and healthy fat before or with a banana, they often notice improved mental clarity within days. It's not magic, it's physiology stabilizing. But there's another dimension rarely discussed: the emotional link to food choices. Many people over 50 associate bananas with health from childhood memories, something safe, recommended, wholesome. That emotional imprint is powerful. When a doctor or nutritionist mentions that bananas can have drawbacks, it can even trigger resistance. It's just a fruit. How can that be bad? Yet this resistance itself can be dangerous because it keeps us from adapting. The foods that served our bodies at one stage don't always serve them at another. True wellness requires curiosity, not stubbornness. Scientific literature has also shown a surprising correlation between frequent consumption of high glycemic fruits and hippocampal shrinkage, a reduction in the brain region responsible for memory and spatial awareness. The hippocampus is especially vulnerable to oxidative stress because it's rich in unsaturated fats, which are easily damaged by free radicals. When insulin resistance develops, even mildly, the hippocampus receives less glucose, starving its neurons. Over time, this contributes to forgetfulness, confusion, and difficulty learning new information. It's not that bananas directly shrink the hippocampus, but the pattern of unstable glucose levels they can produce contributes to an environment where that decline becomes more likely. Now, consider the role of advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These are molecules that form when sugars react with proteins or fats in the body, damaging their structure. The more often your blood sugar spikes, the more AGEs accumulate. In the brain, AGEs interfere with normal cellular repair and communication. They stiffen blood vessels, reducing oxygen delivery. They also make neurons more vulnerable to inflammation. While most people associate AGEs with processed foods, high-frequency sugar consumption, even from fruit, adds to the burden. Here's a real-world scenario. Imagine two people, both 60 years old. The first eats a banana every morning alone, then coffee, then maybe skips lunch. The second eats half a banana with oatmeal, walnuts, and a boiled egg. Their total calories are similar, but their metabolic responses are worlds apart. The first experiences repeated sugar surges and crashes, microinflammation, and dopamine fluctuations. The second experiences slow, sustained glucose release, steady neurotransmitter balance, and consistent focus. Same fruit, different outcome. So, when we talk about mistakes, it's not about vilifying the banana. It's about context. One of the biggest risks after 50 is not contextualizing nutrition. The body's systems are interconnected: hormonal rhythms, metabolic flexibility, vascular elasticity, neural resilience. You can't treat them as isolated parts. Every bite you take either contributes to harmony or adds noise. The older you get, the more sensitive the instrument becomes. Aging, in truth, is not decay, it's accumulation. Accumulation of experiences, yes, but also of micro-damages if we're not careful. The goal isn't perfection, but awareness, because awareness allows adjustment. You can eat the same banana but pair it differently, time it differently, prepare it differently, and your brain experiences it as an entirely new food. Let's talk about magnesium, another mineral deeply linked to banana consumption and brain health. Bananas contain modest magnesium, but not enough to balance the body's needs. Magnesium acts as nature's relaxant. It stabilizes nerve cells, prevents overexcitation, and improves sleep quality. When you eat bananas frequently, but lack other magnesium-rich foods, like leafy greens, almonds, or seeds, you create a partial imbalance: plenty of potassium, little magnesium. This imbalance makes neurons more excitable, leading to anxiety, restlessness, or sensitivity to stress. Many people misread that as a mental health problem, but often it's a nutritional pattern. And there's something profoundly human about realizing this, that our emotions, focus, and energy are not just abstract states, they're chemical reflections of how we nourish ourselves. Another factor: medication interactions. Many people over 50 take medications like ACE inhibitors or potassium-sparing diuretics for blood pressure. These drugs already increase potassium levels. Add daily bananas, and potassium can rise too high. The effect is subtle at first: muscle weakness, lightheadedness, but in some cases it reduces cerebral perfusion, meaning the brain receives slightly less blood flow, less oxygen, less energy. Again, not dangerous in small doses, but cumulative when daily. And then there's the story of fiber, or rather the kind of fiber. Bananas contain soluble fiber, but not enough to offset their sugar load. That's why pairing them with oatmeal, chia, or flax makes such a difference. It slows absorption, protects the pancreas, and keeps the brain's energy delivery steady. This small adjustment transforms the metabolic story from one of chaos to calm. To fully grasp the risk, imagine your brain as a city that never sleeps. Every neuron is a worker, every neurotransmitter a message, every capillary a road. When glucose levels swing too fast, it's like sudden power surges and blackouts hitting different neighborhoods. Some workers speed up, others shut down. Over years, this uneven supply wears out the system. The lights still shine, but dimmer. That's what brain fog feels like, not disease, just inefficiency. But inefficiency, left unaddressed, becomes vulnerability. The emotional impact of this understanding is twofold: relief and responsibility. Relief because it means decline isn't inevitable. Responsibility because it means your daily choices hold power. The brain is remarkably forgiving when given consistency. Studies show that even after years of erratic glucose regulation, cognitive function can rebound with dietary stability in just weeks. Neurons don't forget how to thrive. They just need the right environment again. So the next time you peel a banana, think of it not as a guilty pleasure or a forbidden fruit, but as a test of alignment. Are you eating it in a way that harmonizes with your body's rhythm, or against it? That question, simple as it seems, is at the heart of preventive brain care. In the next block, we'll go deeper into the impact, what truly happens inside the brain when these mistakes compound over years. We'll trace how sugar, potassium, and neurotransmitter imbalance slowly reshape neural networks, and what modern neuroscience says about reversing that process. Because once you understand the mechanism, you understand the control you truly have over your own mental longevity. To understand the impact of these banana-related mistakes, we need to step inside the brain itself to witness what actually unfolds when chemistry, nutrition, and time collide. Picture your brain as a living network of roughly 86 billion neurons, each one shimmering with electrical energy. Each one depending on balance of glucose, electrolytes, and neurotransmitters. It's not chaos in there. It's choreography. Every movement, every thought, every memory is a result of thousands of perfectly synchronized signals. But the moment imbalance enters the bloodstream, that choreography stumbles. Let's return to what happens when a person over 50 eats a banana alone on an empty stomach, something many people do daily without thinking twice. The fruit is digested quickly, and within 15 to 20 minutes, blood sugar rises sharply. Glucose floods the system. Insulin secreted by the pancreas races to bring levels down. This sudden rise and fall doesn't just affect energy, it affects neurons directly. The brain, sensing the initial rush of fuel, activates higher activity in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for focus, reasoning, and decision-making. You feel alert, maybe even uplifted. But as insulin overcorrects, glucose availability drops. The neurons start running low on their primary fuel source. They can't fire efficiently. The prefrontal cortex quiets, and the limbic system, the emotional brain, becomes more dominant. You feel foggy, maybe slightly anxious or impatient. This is the invisible pendulum the brain swings on, all because of one small imbalance in timing or pairing. Over months or years, these swings take a toll. The neurons adapt defensively. They begin reducing the number of insulin receptors they express on their membranes, a process known as neuronal insulin resistance. The same phenomenon seen in the body's muscles and liver can occur in the brain. When neurons become less responsive to insulin, they struggle to absorb glucose efficiently. That means even normal blood sugar levels no longer provide enough fuel. This state, often called type 3 diabetes by researchers, is increasingly recognized as a contributing factor to cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease. And while no single banana causes it, the pattern of frequent glucose spikes certainly contributes to it. Inside the brain cells, mitochondria, the tiny energy producers, start to work harder to compensate. They burn through glucose faster to maintain function, producing more reactive oxygen species in the process. Over time, these free radicals damage the mitochondria themselves. They leak electrons. The neuron's internal environment becomes more acidic. Cellular stress signals increase, calling immune cells like microglia into action. Initially, the microglia clear the damage and protect the brain. But chronic activation transforms them from protectors into aggressors. They start releasing inflammatory molecules, damaging healthy cells nearby. That's how chronic low-grade inflammation begins in the brain, not from infection, but from imbalance. Now imagine this process happening slowly day after day. At first, it's imperceptible. You forget where you left your keys. You lose track of a conversation mid-sentence. You reread the same line twice. Each moment seems trivial, but collectively, they point to an ecosystem under stress. The hippocampus, the brain's memory center, takes the hardest hit. Its neurons are highly dependent on steady glucose supply and especially vulnerable to oxidative stress. When mitochondrial damage and inflammation accumulate, hippocampal cells begin to atrophy. This isn't memory loss yet, it's memory fatigue. It feels like a cloud over your recall. You can still access memories, but they take longer to surface, like trying to pull something from the bottom of a deep pool. At the same time, the blood-brain barrier, which separates the brain's delicate tissue from the bloodstream, starts to weaken with age. Inflammation and high blood sugar compromise its integrity, making it more permeable. That means substances that shouldn't reach the brain, like inflammatory cytokines or even toxins from food, can slip through. Once inside, they amplify the damage, perpetuating a vicious cycle. What began as a small dietary imbalance gradually becomes a systemic neurological stressor. And yet, one of the most haunting aspects of this process is how silent it is. You can't feel your neurons struggling. There's no pain receptor inside your brain to warn you. So the first signs are behavioral, emotional, and cognitive. You notice mood swings that feel disproportionate to the moment. You find it harder to maintain attention during reading or conversation. Sleep becomes less restorative. You wake up feeling like your mind hasn't fully rebooted. These symptoms often get labeled as normal aging, but they're not inevitable. They're signals that the brain's environment needs repair. Let's trace another path of impact, the vascular system. The brain is fed by a network of fine capillaries so intricate that if they were laid end to end, they would stretch for hundreds of miles. These capillaries deliver oxygen and nutrients to every neuron. When blood sugar spikes repeatedly, it damages the delicate endothelial lining of those vessels. Tiny cracks form, leading to microinflammation and stiffness. The vessels lose their ability to dilate effectively, and blood flow becomes less even. This condition, known as microvascular dysfunction, limits how well oxygen reaches different regions of the brain. Certain areas, especially the frontal lobe and hippocampus, begin to operate in a mild chronic state of hypoxia. The neurons there don't die immediately, they simply slow down. They transmit signals less efficiently. This inefficiency shows up as fatigue, forgetfulness, or difficulty multitasking. Potassium, the mineral that gives bananas their healthy reputation, plays a key role here too. It helps maintain the electrical potential across neuron membranes. But balance is critical. Too much potassium, especially in individuals with reduced kidney function, can alter the heart's rhythm and blood pressure, subtly affecting cerebral circulation. The brain, which relies on a steady pulse of oxygenated blood, reacts strongly to any change in flow. Even slight inconsistencies can lead to momentary lapses in focus or minor dizziness, symptoms often dismissed as trivial, but that point to deeper circulatory imbalance. Another layer of impact lies in neurotransmitter harmony. Your mood, motivation, and clarity all depend on precise chemical signals. Bananas, being rich in tryptophan and dopamine precursors, interact directly with these pathways. But when consumed in unstable metabolic conditions, say with high cortisol levels or poor sleep, their effects can flip. Tryptophan conversion to serotonin slows when cortisol is elevated. That means the banana that should lift your mood instead leaves you flat. Dopamine, meanwhile, surges briefly from the banana's natural L-dopa. But if the brain's receptors are already fatigued from frequent stimulation, they down-regulate sensitivity. You feel less pleasure, not more. It's a cruel paradox. The same nutrients that could heal you can, under stress, contribute to imbalance. The gut-brain connection intensifies this effect. In an ideal digestive environment, the resistant starch from slightly green bananas feeds beneficial bacteria like bifidobacterium and lactobacillus. These microbes produce short-chain fatty acids that strengthen the gut barrier and reduce inflammation. But when ripe bananas, full of simple sugars, dominate the diet, they feed less beneficial strains. Gas-forming bacteria thrive, producing compounds like lipopolysaccharides that seep into circulation and inflame the brain. Over time, this gut-driven inflammation becomes one of the strongest predictors of cognitive decline. Meanwhile, the brain's internal housekeeping system, The glymphatic network, which flushes out waste during deep sleep, becomes impaired by these same biochemical shifts. When insulin resistance, inflammation and poor sleep converge, the glymphatic flow slows down. Beta amyloid, the sticky protein associated with Alzheimer's, starts to accumulate around neurons. It interferes with signal transmission, forming plaques that further inflame surrounding tissue. The brain's once clear pathways become cluttered. And the saddest part, it doesn't take a lifetime to begin. Studies show these processes can start silently in midlife. Now picture this process emotionally. Imagine waking up in your 50s or 60s, feeling slightly more disconnected from yourself. Not depressed, but dulled. You used to remember details effortlessly. You used to read books and recall entire paragraphs. But now, thoughts feel scattered, like leaves caught in a breeze. It's easy to blame stress, but often it's chemistry asking for correction. Every neuron wants stability. Every cell is capable of recovery if given the right environment. Yet one of the most dangerous impacts of long-term imbalance isn't purely biological, it's psychological. When mental clarity fades, motivation follows. You start to believe decline is inevitable. You lower expectations. You accept fatigue as your new normal. And that surrender, that quiet resignation, accelerates decline faster than any sugar spike, because the mind and body are reflections of belief and chemistry intertwined. Let's talk about the electrical nature of thought. Each neuron communicates through an electrical impulse, a signal generated by the movement of potassium and sodium ions across its membrane. Too much extracellular potassium disrupts that electrical rhythm, making it harder for neurons to reset between firings. Imagine a city where traffic lights blink at random intervals. That's what disorganized electrical signaling feels like to your brain. It translates into poor concentration, slower reaction times, and mental fatigue. Maintaining the right sodium-potassium balance is crucial for sharpness. It's not that bananas supply too much potassium on their own, but when combined with medications, dehydration, or low sodium intake, they can tip that balance subtly but significantly. In older adults, this imbalance can also affect the vagus nerve, the main communication line between the gut and the brain. When the vagus nerve becomes less responsive due to electrolyte or glucose instability, digestion slows, heart rate variability drops, and anxiety increases. You may feel on edge without knowing why. It's not psychological in origin, it's electrochemical. Your body's internal rhythm is out of tune. Science also shows how repetitive insulin spikes affect the white matter of the brain, the myelin sheaths that insulate nerve fibers and allow signals to travel efficiently. When inflammation and oxidative stress persist, these sheaths degrade. It's called demyelination. Imagine the insulation around electrical wires wearing thin. Signals start leaking. The result is slower cognitive processing, delayed reflexes, and difficulty sustaining focus. The same mechanism underlies many neurodegenerative conditions, but it can begin long before any diagnosis. On a cellular level, glucose oversupply also interferes with autophagy, the process by which cells recycle damaged components. When insulin levels remain high, autophagy slows. Waste products accumulate inside neurons, further impairing communication. This creates what neuroscientists call metabolic gridlock, a state where cells can't efficiently clear debris or generate new energy. It's one of the earliest precursors of cognitive decline. But perhaps the most fascinating and sobering impact is on neuroplasticity. Your brain's ability to form new connections, learn, and adapt relies on a molecule called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF acts like fertilizer for neurons. It encourages growth, strengthens synapses, and protects against stress. Studies show that unstable blood sugar and inflammation sharply reduce BDNF levels. In contrast, stable glucose and nutrient balance raise them. This means the same banana that could nourish your neurons under the right conditions can suppress their growth under the wrong ones. Context is everything. When BDNF drops, you don't just lose memory, you lose resilience. The brain becomes less capable of bouncing back from stress, less able to learn new things, less adaptable. Life feels heavier. But here's the good news. BDNF responds quickly to change. Within weeks of stabilizing blood sugar, sleeping better, and introducing anti-inflammatory nutrients, BDNF levels can double. The brain literally begins to heal. That's why awareness matters. It gives you control over that healing process. There's a visual metaphor for this. Imagine your brain as a forest. Every neuron is a tree, its branches are synapses. When glucose is stable and nutrients balanced, sunlight filters through evenly, and the trees grow strong and connected. But when sugar spikes and inflammation persist, dark clouds gather. The trees begin to wither, branches disconnect, and the forest loses its lushness. The potential for regrowth is still there, it just needs clear skies again. And that's where understanding the impact turns into empowerment. Because every one of these processes, oxidative stress, inflammation, insulin resistance, neurotransmitter imbalance, is reversible in its early stages. The brain is remarkably plastic. It's constantly remodeling itself based on your daily choices. You can create an internal environment of clarity the same way you once unknowingly created one of fatigue. To feel that shift, it helps to imagine the brain as not separate from the rest of the body, but as its command center, reflecting everything below. When your gut is balanced, your brain calms. When your sleep is deep, your neurons repair. When your meals are balanced, your thoughts flow more smoothly. It's all one system. And that's the deeper lesson behind the banana mistakes. Not that one food harms you, but that disconnection between food, timing, and biology is what truly damages vitality. The impact of that disconnection is cumulative, but so is the healing that follows awareness. You can change the trajectory at any age, because the brain never stops listening to what you feed it, physically, emotionally, and mentally. In the next block, we'll step into that healing process. We'll explore the relief phase, how to use simple food pairings, timing adjustments, and nutrient strategies to not only avoid these mistakes, but actively strengthen memory, focus, and long-term brain vitality. Because knowledge means little until it becomes action, and action begins with clarity. Relief begins not when you cut things out of your diet, but when you start understanding why your body reacts the way it does. Because knowledge, when applied with compassion, has a healing effect all its own. The truth is, the same banana that can cloud your mind can also protect it, if you learn to work with your body's rhythm instead of against it. This is where food becomes medicine, not by restriction, but by restoration. Imagine waking up tomorrow and eating the same fruit. But this time you do it right. No sugar crash, no foggy energy, no afternoon fatigue. Just steady focus, mental calm, and a kind of clarity that feels effortless. That's the power of small informed adjustments. And for the brain, especially after 50, these adjustments can mean the difference between slow decline and vibrant longevity. Let's start where most mistakes begin. Timing. When you eat your banana determines how your brain experiences it. Morning blood sugar is naturally higher because cortisol, the body's wake-up hormone, peaks around sunrise. Cortisol mobilizes glucose, preparing your brain for action. If you add a high-sugar fruit like a ripe banana at that moment, you amplify that spike. The trick then isn't to avoid bananas, but to buffer them. Pair them with protein, healthy fats, or fiber, so your glucose rises gradually instead of sharply. Think of it as teaching your body patience. For example, imagine starting your day not with just a banana and coffee, but with a small handful of walnuts, chia seeds, or a boiled egg alongside it. Those foods slow digestion, steady insulin release, and prevent the brain from experiencing that sudden rush and crash. This one simple change rewrites your morning chemistry. Within days you feel calmer, clearer, and less dependent on caffeine. It's not magic, it's biology working efficiently. Next comes ripeness. The visual cue of brown spots may seem harmless, but it completely changes the fruit's chemistry. The more spotted a banana becomes, the more its resistant starch converts into simple sugars. That's why slightly green bananas are your brain's best friend. Their starch digests slowly, feeding beneficial gut bacteria and providing a gentle, consistent energy release. Those bacteria, in turn, produce short-chain fatty acids that nourish the brain and reduce inflammation. In other words, an underripe banana doesn't just stabilize your blood sugar, it stabilizes your mood. And speaking of the gut, This is where real relief begins. The gut-brain axis is like a two-way radio. Every signal in the intestines echoes in the mind. A healthy gut produces neurotransmitters, strengthens immunity, and keeps inflammation low. But when your diet overfeeds the wrong bacteria, especially sugar-loving ones, they release toxins that can cross into the bloodstream and irritate the brain. To reverse this, balance your banana intake with prebiotics and probiotics. Think yogurt with live cultures, kefir, sauerkraut, or even just more fiber from greens. These foods act like peacekeepers in your digestive tract, helping the banana work for you instead of against you. Now let's talk about hydration and electrolytes. After 50, the body's ability to regulate electrolytes becomes more fragile, especially under medication. Potassium is vital, but it must exist in harmony with magnesium and sodium. Too much potassium without enough magnesium can cause neurons to overfire. You might feel restless, anxious, or mentally fatigued. To counter this, add magnesium-rich foods, almonds, pumpkin seeds, or leafy greens, to your daily routine. If you eat a banana every morning, balance it with a small handful of nuts or spinach in your smoothie. That combination restores equilibrium to your brain's electrical system, stabilizing mood and focus. Magnesium also improves sleep quality, which is where the next layer of relief unfolds. Remember how bananas eaten too late can interfere with deep sleep. The solution isn't to ban them from your evenings, it's to time them smartly. If you crave one at night, eat it at least 2 hours before bed and pair it with a spoon of almond butter or Greek yogurt. The protein slows sugar absorption, while the magnesium and tryptophan gently support serotonin and melatonin production. The result is steadier blood sugar, calmer nerves, and more restorative sleep. Your brain uses that sleep to clear toxins, repair cells, and reset neurotransmitter balance. It's one of the most powerful anti-aging tools you have, and it begins with simple awareness. There's also the issue of context, what your body has been through before the banana ever arrives. If your previous meal was processed, salty, or high in refined carbs, your insulin sensitivity will already be compromised. That means your next meal, no matter how healthy, will hit harder. To fix this, think in patterns, not moments. Balance yesterday's indulgence with today's discipline. A banana after a fiber-rich lunch or as part of a post-workout snack behaves entirely differently from one eaten after a processed breakfast. You're not just feeding your body, you're setting the stage for your brain's chemistry tomorrow. For those who take medications, awareness becomes even more vital. Certain blood pressure and heart drugs elevate potassium retention. Combine those with daily bananas, and you might feel slight dizziness or fatigue without realizing why. This doesn't mean you need to eliminate bananas, it means moderation and spacing. Rotate your fruits, add berries, apples, or kiwis. Each one supports brain health in its own way, and variety ensures no single nutrient overwhelms your system. Another overlooked key to brain relief is rhythm. The brain thrives on consistency. When meals are erratic, it spends energy adjusting instead of optimizing. Try aligning your banana intake with activity. Before a walk, it provides gentle energy. After a workout, it replenishes glycogen and electrolytes efficiently. But in moments of inactivity, like watching TV late at night, it can become a burden. Aligning food with motion is one of the simplest ways to sync your metabolism with your brain's natural rhythm. And then there's the emotional layer of relief, the psychological peace that comes when you stop fearing food. The wellness industry often turns nutrition into a battlefield of good and bad. But biology doesn't work in absolutes, it works in balance. The banana isn't an enemy, it's a mirror. It reflects how well your habits, hormones, and timing align. Once you learn to interpret that reflection, you reclaim control. You realize that no single food determines your health. Your relationship with food does. From a neurological standpoint, this mindset shift is powerful. When you stop associating food with guilt, cortisol levels drop. Lower cortisol means less inflammation, better blood sugar control, and sharper cognition. The brain interprets peace of mind as safety, and safety is the foundation of healing. That's why gratitude before eating, even for something as simple as a banana, genuinely changes digestion and absorption. Science now shows that mindful eating, taking a few deep breaths before your meal, lowers blood sugar spikes by calming the nervous system. The simple act of slowing down rewires how your body uses energy. Let's go even deeper into the science of repair. When you correct these mistakes, pairing, timing, variety, your brain begins to respond almost immediately. Within 72 hours, glucose fluctuations start to stabilize. Within a week, cortisol levels even out. Within 2 weeks, sleep deepens, energy steadies, and focus sharpens. By 1 month, mitochondria start regenerating more efficiently, and inflammation markers drop. These are not abstract numbers, they're cellular transformations happening quietly inside you. One particularly fascinating process that gets reactivated is autophagy, the body's natural cleanup mechanism. Stable glucose and longer periods without snacking give your cells time to recycle damaged parts. Think of it as your brain taking out the trash. Intermittent fasting or simply spacing meals 4 to 5 hours apart can enhance this process. During autophagy, old proteins, waste molecules and dysfunctional mitochondria are cleared out, making room for new, efficient cells. Combined with proper nutrition, this can reverse years of metabolic strain. Adding certain nutrients can accelerate this repair. For instance, omega-3 fatty acids from fish like salmon or plant sources like flaxseed strengthen neuronal membranes, improving communication between brain cells. Vitamin B6, which bananas already contain, becomes more effective when supported by magnesium and zinc. These cofactors ensure neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine are produced efficiently, enhancing mood and cognitive stability. So rather than isolating one food, think synergy. A banana with a small piece of dark chocolate, rich in magnesium and flavonoids, can boost blood flow to the brain while maintaining balance. Hydration, too, plays an underrated role in brain relief. Dehydration thickens blood, reducing oxygen delivery to neurons. It also amplifies the effects of sugar fluctuations. Many people misinterpret dehydration fatigue as mental fog, so before changing your diet drastically, start by simply drinking more water. Add a pinch of sea salt or a squeeze of lemon to improve absorption. When you combine proper hydration with balanced nutrition, the brain's energy systems harmonize effortlessly. And don't underestimate the power of sunlight. Vitamin D is essential for regulating mood and cognitive health. It influences the expression of genes that control inflammation and neural growth. When combined with balanced nutrition, sunlight acts as a natural antidepressant. Morning light exposure in particular sets your circadian rhythm, improving both focus during the day and sleep at night. A banana eaten outdoors after a short walk in the sun behaves differently in your body than one eaten hurriedly under artificial light. It's not superstition, it's physiology responding to environment. Here's another practical insight. The sequence in which you eat your foods matters. Studies show that when you eat fiber or protein first, followed by carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises more slowly. So instead of starting breakfast with a banana, begin with eggs, oatmeal, or even a few bites of nuts. Then eat your banana. The difference in glucose response can be dramatic, up to 40% lower. That means less insulin, less inflammation, and more sustained focus. It's a simple shift that pays enormous dividends for brain longevity. Let's also address the fear of natural sugar. The brain does need glucose, but it thrives on stability, not quantity. Think of it like feeding a fire. Too much wood at once smothers the flame. Small, steady additions keep it burning clean. Bananas are not the problem. Unbuffered sugar is. By pairing them wisely, you turn a volatile food into a stabilizing one, and that stability keeps your neurons firing smoothly for hours, not minutes. In people over 50, maintaining brain flexibility, the ability to shift between tasks, adapt to change, and learn new information, depends heavily on glucose control and inflammation reduction. When you master your banana habits, you're not just preventing decline, you're building resilience. Your brain becomes quicker to recover from stress, faster at forming memories and better at regulating mood. The payoff is subtle at first, but unmistakable over time. You feel younger, steadier, and more yourself. Finally, there's a deeper emotional relief that comes from reconnecting with your body's wisdom. Aging is not a punishment. It's a conversation. Your body speaks through sensations, cravings, energy shifts, and sleep patterns. When you listen closely, you realize it's always guiding you toward balance. The banana story is simply a metaphor for that dialogue. It teaches that even the healthiest things can harm us when we stop paying attention, and even the simplest things can heal us when we listen again. This is where food stops being a checklist and becomes a form of self-respect. You begin to see that the goal isn't to avoid mistakes, but to evolve through them. That's the real essence of healthy aging, adaptability. And your brain, more than any organ, rewards adaptability with longevity. In the next and final block, we'll move from relief to empowerment, how to take everything you've learned and turn it into a sustainable, life-giving rhythm. Because real health isn't about what you avoid, it's about what you build. Empowerment begins when awareness transforms into action. The goal isn't to fear food or to memorize rules. It's to build a relationship with your body that's based on trust, understanding, and rhythm. After all, your brain doesn't want perfection. It wants consistency. It thrives when you feed it with intention, when you let it rest, when you move it through curiosity and gratitude. And that's where everything changes. By now, you understand the risks of eating bananas the wrong way, the glucose spikes, the neurotransmitter imbalances, the inflammation that slowly clouds clarity. You also understand how simple adjustments can reverse all of that. Pairing, timing, hydration, magnesium balance, sleep alignment. But what matters most is the mindset that comes next. Because long-term brain health doesn't come from isolated habits. It comes from identity. From seeing yourself as someone who takes care of their mind deliberately, patiently, lovingly. That identity shapes every choice without effort. So let's imagine what that identity looks like. Picture waking up not rushed but aware. You drink water first because you know your brain spent the night detoxifying and now needs hydration to restart its systems. You feel calm, not hurried. Maybe you do a brief stretch, open a window, breathe in the morning air. This simple act stabilizes your cortisol and sets the tone for balance. Then, when you reach for breakfast, you do it consciously. Instead of just grabbing a banana and coffee, you combine it with something that nourishes long-term energy. Maybe oatmeal, chia pudding, or yogurt. You eat slowly. You taste the food. You enjoy it. And in that moment, your body registers safety. Safety tells your brain there's no emergency, no need for stress hormones. It can focus fully on the present. That's mental clarity at its root. Throughout the day, you begin to see your habits not as restrictions but as forms of respect. You choose balance because you've felt the difference between chaos and calm. You've learned that steady energy isn't boring, it's freedom. Freedom from anxiety, from brain fog, from dependence on stimulants just to get through the day. You become the kind of person who doesn't chase quick fixes because you've discovered the deeper satisfaction of equilibrium. That shift is quiet, but it's life-changing. For brain health, that consistency becomes your foundation. You start noticing patterns. Days when you eat too quickly, you feel more irritable. Nights when you snack late, your sleep feels shallower. Mornings when you balance your meal, your focus stays steady for hours. These observations aren't punishments, they're data. Your body is giving you feedback, and for the first time, you're listening. This is empowerment in its purest form. From a scientific perspective, every consistent, balanced meal rewires your brain's circuitry towards stability. The neurons that once struggled under oxidative stress start to repair. Mitochondria regain efficiency. The inflammatory cytokines that once circulated through your bloodstream begin to quiet down. The hippocampus, now well-nourished and oxygenated, strengthens its connections. Memory improves. Creativity feels effortless again. These are not distant dreams. They're biological responses to consistency. Empowerment also means giving your brain variety, the right kind of stimulation. Just as your muscles need different exercises, your neurons need different challenges. Learning a new skill, reading something complex, practicing a musical instrument, or even walking a new route. All these acts stimulate neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells. Nutrition sets the stage, but curiosity builds the structure. When your body is well fed and your mind engaged, the two reinforce each other beautifully. There's a concept in neuroscience called neural reserve. It's your brain's ability to resist decline by building a network of alternative pathways. The more you learn, the more flexible and resilient your brain becomes. Balanced nutrition, like managing your banana habits, isn't just about fuel. It's about creating the biochemical environment in which those new connections can form. Each stable glucose level, each night of deep sleep, each calm morning, all of it makes your brain more adaptable to change and resistant to stress. Now, let's talk about emotional empowerment. Many people in midlife feel betrayed by their bodies. They see wrinkles, slower metabolism, or forgetfulness as signs of loss. But what if they're really invitations to wisdom? Every change in your biology is a message asking for a new kind of care. Your body isn't failing, it's evolving. It's asking you to evolve with it. When you listen to those messages instead of ignoring them, you build trust. And trust between you and your body restores vitality faster than any supplement ever could. This is why food choices, even something as simple as how you eat a banana, are so symbolic. They remind you that power lies in the details. They remind you that awareness is strength. Every time you choose stability over convenience, you strengthen the neural circuits responsible for discipline and self-respect. Those same circuits influence how you handle stress, how you communicate, and how you recover from setbacks. In other words, your eating habits literally train your emotional resilience. And that's where this conversation becomes bigger than nutrition. It becomes about identity. Because when you start feeding your brain consciously, you're no longer someone who reacts to fatigue or mood swings helplessly. You're someone who responds. You pause. You understand what's happening in your body and adjust gracefully. You become calm under pressure because your biology is stable. People notice it. They see it in your eyes, in your presence. That quiet steadiness becomes your signature. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. The deeper you go into this process, the more you realize how interconnected it all is. Your nutrition affects your sleep affects your mood affects your choices affect your brain. The cycle can spiral down, or it can spiral upward. Empowerment means steering it upward on purpose. You start noticing how your body thanks you. You wake up clearer. You retain information faster. Your creativity returns. Even your relationships feel easier because you're less reactive. That's the kind of vitality money can't buy, but awareness can create. Now, let's bring this back to the brain itself, the biological center of your empowerment. Once your glucose levels stabilize, something remarkable happens inside your neurons. The mitochondria begin producing energy more cleanly, with fewer free radicals. This reduction in oxidative stress allows the brain to repair itself naturally. The production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, that fertilizer for your neurons, increases. You start forming stronger memories, sharper focus, more balanced emotions. The fog lifts, replaced by clarity and calm drive. And here's something even more profound. As inflammation drops, communication between your gut and brain improves. The vagus nerve, the great connector, becomes more responsive. Digestion becomes smoother, heart rate variability increases, anxiety lessens. You begin to feel aligned in ways that words can barely describe. It's not just mental clarity, it's harmony between systems. You don't just think better, you live better. The empowered mind also becomes self-correcting. You no longer need to count every nutrient or fear every meal. You develop intuition, an embodied understanding of what your body needs. You can sense when you're overdoing sugar or when you need more magnesium or protein. This internal feedback loop is something modern medicine can't replicate because it's not measurable. It's experiential. It's the wisdom that comes from paying attention over time, and once you develop it, it never leaves you. Part of empowerment is also letting go of guilt. Maybe you've made mistakes in the past, skipped meals, lived on caffeine, ignored sleep, overindulged in sweets. But guilt does nothing for healing. Biology responds to care, not punishment. Forgive yourself for what you didn't know then. Every new day you understand your body better is a day reclaimed. The brain's ability to adapt is astounding. It can recover from years of neglect when given stability and nourishment. That's not theory. That's proven neuroplasticity. When people think of aging gracefully, they often picture skin or posture, but true graceful aging happens in the mind. It's the ability to stay curious, patient, and hopeful even as the body changes. It's knowing that vitality isn't youth, it's balance. Your energy no longer needs to come from excitement or sugar highs. It can come from steadiness, from being deeply in tune with yourself. Now imagine what life looks like when this becomes your default. You wake up energized without caffeine dependence. You eat meals that keep your mind sharp for hours. You handle stress calmly because your blood sugar and cortisol remain steady. You enjoy small pleasures, like a banana with breakfast, not out of habit, but out of understanding. And when people around you ask why you seem so grounded, you smile because you know it's not luck. It's chemistry, consistency, and self-respect working together. The beauty of empowerment is that it ripples outward. When you live with clarity, others notice. They feel calmer around you. Your steadiness inspires trust. Friends ask what changed, and you explain not in technical terms, but in simple truths. I started paying attention to how my body feels after what I eat. That sentence, humble as it sounds, is revolutionary, because attention, sustained, compassionate attention, is the foundation of every transformation. For decades, medicine treated the brain as a mystery, something separate from the body. But modern science has proven what intuition always knew: the brain is the body. What you feel emotionally reflects what you nourish physically. What you digest in the gut shapes what you think in the mind. So when you feed yourself with care, you're not just preventing disease, you're cultivating emotional stability, creativity, and joy. To maintain this empowerment, think of your lifestyle as a symphony. Food is one instrument, sleep is another. Movement, sunlight, and social connection are others. Each plays a role in your cognitive harmony. Neglect one for too long and the music falters. But when you attend to each, the result is something beautiful. Mental peace that feels effortless because it's supported by biology, not forced by willpower. It's also essential to remember that change doesn't happen overnight. The body you have today is a reflection of habits built over decades. But the brain's adaptability means every small shift makes a difference. Even if you simply start pairing your banana with protein, even if you drink more water or go to bed an hour earlier, your neurons notice. They respond. Healing begins in microscopic ways long before you feel it. Trust that process. Empowerment, then, is not a destination. It's a rhythm, a lifelong conversation between you and your biology. Some days will be perfectly balanced, others will not. But what matters is that you return to awareness each time. You learn, you adjust, you evolve. That's how the brain stays young, through continuous adaptation. As you move forward, remember, your brain is not deteriorating, it's responding. Every thought, every meal, every emotion is input. You are not at the mercy of decline. You are the conductor of your own chemistry. And when you understand that, aging stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like mastery. So tomorrow, when you peel a banana, do it with awareness. Feel its weight, its texture. Know that this simple fruit carries both the power to harm and the power to heal, depending on how you meet it. Eat it with intention. Pair it with nourishment. Give your brain what it truly needs: balance, steadiness, and care. Because the goal is not to fear the foods that once comforted you. The goal is to evolve with wisdom, to eat, think, and live in a way that honors the body that's carried you this far. And as you do, you'll notice something profound. Clarity isn't something you chase anymore. It's something you become.